Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhidamastu Mavit Dvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Let there be peace, happiness and harmony among the whole creation. Om, peace, peace, peace. So good morning. It's a pleasant morning. So as you know, the topic is Journey to Infinite Life according to the Katha Upanishad. First of all, I shall say a few things about this Upanishad. Upanishads are the essence of Vedic literature or Vedantic literature. Upanishads themselves literally means the science of the highest spiritual reality. That's what it means. Something that removes our ignorance and brings us to the light of knowledge. That's the essence of Upanishad. So I shall introduce this particular text. It's a very interesting text. It is in the form of a dialogue. And do you know who is the teacher? The teacher is death. And death is teaching you about immortality, about deathlessness. So, the teacher in this particular text is called Yama, and Yama is mythologically the lord of death. And he is teaching about the deathlessness of life. Now, what is meant by deathlessness? In a few words, I can express this idea. In Vedanta, we don't die. What we call death is a misnomer. It is a lie, in fact. That's what Vivekananda uses. To say that anyone will die is a terrible lie. Why? Because when we interpret ourselves as this physical body, then of course the disappearance of this body is the end of everything. But Vedanta tells us that our true identity is an immortal, deathless spiritual principle, and it never dies. And the so-called death, which means the end of this physical body, is only a transition point. Like you change a flight from one airport, catch another flight. Like a comma, not a full stop. Or at the most a semicolon. That's what death means. Now once we realize this, you'll be surprised. It gives us a tremendous inner confidence. See, very often our life depends upon how we interpret ourselves. Suppose, let us say, if we interpret ourselves as a physical being who is enjoying money, wealth and status, then if the banks collapse, the BP goes up, it's a big disaster. But suppose we interpret ourselves as something beyond this body, let us say we are an intellectual being. If you read the lives of great scientists, philosophers, poets, mystics, I'm not talking of spiritual mystics, I'm talking about those who have reached a higher level of philosophical speculation, the mystical school of philosophy. You find many of them had serious physical problems. Look at a man like Stephen Hawking. He's not somebody who sits in a church and prays all the time. He is very much a man of this world. And if you suppose he interprets himself as a physical human being, he would have died long back. This man is able to do great work in science, makes a lot of predictions, futurology is an important area of his specialization, scientific futurology. Many things he had made a great contribution to what we may call philosophy of life, or the speculative aspect of modern science. Suppose he interpreted himself as a physical human being, he won't be what he is today. So you find he has ascended himself above the physical dimension. He's an intellectual being who sees himself as a thinking, as a speculating, as a philosophizing, as an investigating scientist. Now there are great men who goes even beyond this level. Modern times, of course, all of us know about men like Jesus, Buddha, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, all these people. If you read their life, they had a lot of physical problems, cancer, all these problems they had. Of course, Sri Ramakrishna I'm talking about. And Jesus Christ's life was certainly not a very pleasant one from a purely physical point of view. It is not a pleasant experience to be tied to a cross and nails being driven all over your body. So he didn't think of himself as a physical being. He thought of himself as a spiritual being. You can find this happening among many mystics, many founders of religion at various levels. So once we reach a higher level, going beyond the physical, even in the intellectual, at the spiritual level, then we find we are the real I, never dies. We have something other than the physical. That's our true identity. And the so-called physical disappearance is only a very small affair. You may ask the question, this is certainly a very big idea, but suppose you have to go to Kaiser, you have to go to a hospital, we are facing a big problem in everyday life. How does this philosophy help you? And this philosophy really becomes a great help at a purely psychological level. Well, suppose we can think of physical problems as part of this impermanent, changing, ever-changing phenomena of physical life, which can never be perfect by itself. The human body is bound to be sick. Otherwise, it's not a human body. It could be a stone, never falls sick. But a human body, because a human body, it falls sick. It's its nature, because it's not perfect. It is not permanent. It is impermanent. It is imperfect by itself. So once we understand, it doesn't mean that we should stop going to the hospital. It only means we may go to the hospital, we may take care of this body, but it won't be a big burden. It won't be a big disaster for us when we fall sick or when we face a problem at a physical level. So the ability to look upon the impermanent as impermanent, the ability to look upon the non-permanent as non-permanent, and the ability to avoid interpreting or expecting perfection from imperfect things, dreaming of perfection, dreaming of perpetual happiness from this world, which is a combination by its very nature of happiness and unhappiness. The ability to avoid expectations of permanence in an impermanent world. That is the only benefit of reading Vedanta. So, in fact, that's the message you find here. That's why the teacher is the Lord of Death. And the lesson he gives is the lesson of deathlessness. His own limitation. I shall give in a nutshell the whole story, the narrative. But before that, a few things about this text. This text, it actually belongs to one of the well-known Vedic literature. The foundational scripture of Vedanta, and in a way Indian philosophy, Indian culture, is the Vedas. And for those of you who are interested, you'll be surprised to know that from 18th century onwards, European Indologists, or they call Orientalists, they were called academically, they started taking a lot of interest in Vedic literature. It all began in Germany, later it spread over to England, to France, and later Italy, and of course in Eastern countries, Far Eastern countries. The Vedic literature became a great fascination for great thinkers, a great German philosopher like Schopenhauer, a great German linguist like Max Muller, and many others. So, okay, now there are altogether 4 branches for the Vedic corpus. It's called Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda. It's a 4 Vedas. Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda. They were altogether one corpus. A great philosopher and sage who lived around 4000 BC, he edited and classified them into 4 groups. And so we got these 4 Vedas. Of this, Yajurveda has got 2 branches. One is technically called Krishna and Shukla Veda, Yajurveda. I mean the 2 branches. And of his Krishna Yajurveda has got many philosophical sections, of which this Katha Upanishad is one of the most prominent one. This is the scriptural, the canonical description of the origin of this particular Upanishad. Now coming back to the central narrative, then we'll go to the text. As I mentioned, the message is the message of immortality or deathlessness. And the teacher is the Lord of Death. A small boy one day happened to witness his father, who was engaged in a Vedic ritual. That's how the story begins. So it's in the form of a dialogue, very interesting dialogue. And the teacher is Lord of Death, and the student is a small little boy of 5 years old. So this boy watched his father engaged in a Vedic ritual, elaborate ritual. He found his father was playing a trick. One of the important rituals of this ceremony was that he should make a gift of the most precious possessions of his to the needy people. And in those days, the most precious possession of a householder was cattle, because cattle will give you milk, yogurt, curds they call, and it was the currency. There were many horses and cattle were the major currency in ancient time, 4000, 5000 BC. You have to think of the pastoral culture of the ancient Aryan tribes. So they had cattle as the most important currency, and also horses. So one important ceremony of this ritual was he should make a gift of his best cows. But what this man did, his father, the little boy, he watched. His father was keeping away all the best cows and making a gift of all old cows which won't give any milk and which will cost a fortune for you to maintain them, and maybe occasional kicks also if you try to milk them. So, Pitodaga, Jigdadruna, Dugdadoha, Nirintriyaha. These are 4 adjectives are used in the Katha Upanishad. Pitodaga means that cow cannot eat any more grass. It has already eaten all the allotted grass in this life. That's what literally it means. And it can't give milk. And it's old. It has become old, useless cows. At the same time, this man wanted a great name as a big philanthropist. So it's just like a rich man giving a blank check in a press conference, with all the people will report, and finally the recipient finds out it's a blank check. That's what he was doing. The little boy was an entirely different type of person. His name was Nachiketa. The father's name was Vajasrava. The name itself means a man who is seeking a great reputation as a great sacrificer. Sacrifice in those days didn't mean animal sacrifice. It means renunciation, giving up things. The little boy slowly was watching, and he found out he could see through the game. So, in fact, that is the essence of this message. The little boy had what we call integrity, sincerity, earnestness. All these, which together can be called Shraddha in Sanskrit. In Sanskrit, there is a word called Shraddha, which, according to Vivekananda, cannot be translated into any language. Shraddha is what enables you to look upon something as very sacred, as with a sense of sanctity, as something you consider as very important, for which you are willing to sacrifice a lot. So that's called Shraddha. So it's a kind of a sense of sanctity, sacredness, honesty, integrity, earnestness altogether. This boy had this quality which his father didn't have. So he went to the father and asked him. It's a very interesting twist in the scripture which you won't read when you read the literal translation. He asked him, Kasmai mam dasasidi, this is Sanskrit, to whom are you going to give me? That's a meaning. So, to whom are you going to give me? The boy didn't tell the father, you should give good cows. But he wanted to bring his father to a sense of his real duty and responsibility. Because, and there is an interesting message behind, difficult to understand, but I shall explain. One important ceremony of this ritual was, one should give one's most precious wealth. What's the most precious wealth of a father? His children. And he was the eldest child. He had only son at that time. He had no other child, Vajasrava. So, to whom are you going to give me? Sarvasudanam it is called. Sarvasudanam. Sarvasu means the most precious, everything is Sarvasu. So, to whom are you going to make a gift of me? This he repeated 3 times when the father was with great pomp and ceremony giving a gift of all worthless cows in the presence of all the people. The father got annoyed. So, Didiyam, Tridiyam, Sahovaja, Kasmai Mam Dasasidi. That's what Upanishad says. 3 times he asked father, to whom are you going to give me as a gift? And the father got annoyed. Get away from here, something like that. Mrityavetvam dadamidi. I am going to give you to the Lord of Death. Mrityu in ordinary language means death. And that death means only the end of this body. The liquid, the termination of physical body. That's what it means actually, mrityu. That's the opposite of immortality. So, the trying to drive away an annoying expression. I'm going to give you a lot of China. You are making a gift of me to the Lord of Death, then I should certainly go to the Lord of Death. So here the mythology takes. So the boy starts his journey to the Lord of Death. That's a mythology. Within the mythology, the greatest spiritual message relevance to our times, to everyone. Goes to the Lord of Death, reaches the palace, didn't get away, return, did not go away from there. He waited in the palace of the Lord. So, the name of the teacher. He returned on the third day, waiting for him without food. He had taken a vow he won't take food till but the greatness, the hidden glory. So he apologized to the boy. Well, I'm sorry, you were waiting for me for 3 days. What can I do for you as a compensation? The boy didn't want anything. But anyway, the Lord said, you waited for 3 days in my palace without food and drink and rest. So as a compensation, I shall give you 3 boons. These 3 boons, and the way the little boy, Nachiketa, accepts these boons, responds to these gifts, represent 3 levels of humanity. It is the story of human journey to immortality. So that's the essence of this Upanishad. The first boon the little boy asked. Now you can imagine a small little boy. He has come to the Lord to a rich man, let us say, and the rich man offers 3 boons. And the first boon was very simple. That in a way corresponds to the basic human aspirations. We read the history of civilization. You can find this. History of human aspirations. History of human spiritual evolution. The first boon was this. When I get back to my home, my father should not scold me. He was a little boy, he had run away from his home without his father's permission, much to his father's annoyance, and he was expecting some scolding. So he was very much afraid. So when I get back to my home, my father should not be angry with me. He should speak to me softly. This is a very simple, boon. Shanda sankalpa sumana yadasya vida manyu gautamumma abhimurtyu tat prasishtamma abhivade prasida edatrayanam prathamam varam vrine. This is the first boon. This is a Sanskrit verse. I shall translate it in English. First, when I get back to my home, my father should be sitting there calm and quiet. And he should speak to me very softly. He should not scold me. This is the first boon. Now you can imagine what is our first aspiration. Every day when we get up, we should have all the necessary things fulfilled. Families, friends, job, colleagues, all should be friendly. Nobody wants to confront difficulties in everyday human existence. That's the first. That's what we all pray. No, every human being. For every human being, the first aspiration is every day we must have peace of mind. We want that children should get education, or admission to good schools, or good job security. These are the necessary things that everyone look for. And there is nothing wrong in asking or praying for this. But you should also be able to pray for something higher. Nothing wrong in asking or praying for material welfare. That is a great misunderstanding, Vedanta is very, very wrongly and in a very, very tragic way is interpreted as a kind of life-negating, world-negating, extreme form of asceticism which is blind to the realities of life in this world. It is a very, very wrong, very absolutely misleading interpretation. So Vedanta is a very, very complete, compact philosophy and way of life. the four values which guide practical Vedanta are dharma, artha, kama and moksha, which in English it means some regulatory principles of ethics and morality, that you'll be able to live in this world. You can swing your hands, but you should not hit other man's head. Necessary needs. It's okay. But it should not violate the principles of dharma. Dharma is the principle of integrity, harmony, ethics and morality. Dharma is not necessarily spiritual, transcendental principle. Dharma is as empirical as transcendental. Dharma is needed even for non-believers, even for atheists, even for people living very utilitarian life. Dharma is needed. Discipline, some self-restraint, so that you will be able to live a happy life in this world. So that's the meaning of dharma. Remember, it is not dharma as understood in Buddhist philosophy. In Buddhist tradition, dharma is the central principle. But here, dharma is a regulatory principle. It's one aspect of the higher dharma. Of course, you can say the eightfold path of Buddhist tradition corresponds to dharma here, more or less. I mean, right conduct, right behavior, discipline, right effort, samyak ajiva, samyak sankalpa, and samyak vyayama, all these are included, this is dharma. So, when we try to acquire the means for fulfilling our material desires, we should not violate some fundamental ethical principles of dharma. If we violate and try to acquire means for enjoyment, then we won't have the psychological or spiritual health to enjoy what we may pile up a huge bank balance, but we will be dreaming of living in Hawaii, but we will be living either in an institution or in the hospital. That's all. So, once we deviate the path of dharma in a pursuit of success itself eventually becomes a failure. We won't have the physical or psychological health to enjoy the benefits, the fruits of success, the fruits of wealth, the fruits of prosperity. We may acquire prosperity, but we won't be able to enjoy prosperity. So the means are as important as the ends. Otherwise, the means will themselves defeat the ends. We work hard, but eventually we are defeated, though we attain our material goal. So, this is the meaning of dharma. So, artha and kama correspond to the means and the desires to be fulfilled. And moksha is something different, the higher transcendental principle, which we will deal with maybe tomorrow. So, the point is, Nachiketa is asking for this prosperity, wealth, and happy life in this world, material life, with good family, good culture, good family relationship. Father should not scold him. That is the metaphor that's used in the Upanishad. Shanta sankalpa sumana yadhasya. My father's mind will be very, very calm and quiet. He should be quite peaceful, and he should speak to me very nicely. This was a simple boon, for a big God, the great God to give. So immediately he agreed. Okay, fine. Now, that is one stage of human aspiration. In fact, it corresponds to one stage in the evolution of human civilization. But then the Upanishad doesn't stop there. Then it goes further. Nachiketa asks for the second boon. The second boon is something higher. So the little boy thought, well, now this God, Lord of Death, has guaranteed happy life. When I go back to my home, Father will not scold me, everything will be okay. But how long are we going to live in this world? Maybe a healthy life, if you follow the principles of guidelines of healthy food, healthy hygiene, everything, maybe 100 years. According to Vedic tradition, Shatayusha Purusha, means 100 years. Maybe not 100, maybe much less, of course. So, but still, what about life after death? In fact, the thought of continuity of existence after death is an important stage in human spiritual evolution. If we cannot think beyond the present, beyond today, beyond the momentary enjoyments, then we will become brutes or we become animals. That's an important point to remember. Belief in a continued existence, some transcendental principle, believe that we have something much more than the physical body. The belief either you will be punished in hell, or as in Buddhism or Hinduism, you have to pay the price for bad actions done in this life. All these constitute some sort of restraining element in human activities. People who do not believe in any of these values cannot actually follow the principles of dharma. Vivekananda, in a very interesting discussion, he asked this question. In fact, he's building up an argument. He takes the side of an atheist just to refute him later. He says, if by foul play, by stealing, by doing the wrong thing, I can be happy, why not go for it? If this is the only life we can think of, if this is the only life that we can think of, if there is nothing beyond death, then we are not different from an animal or a rock, a stone or a plant. So, some sort of belief in a continued existence, even after death, and a belief that God will reward for our good actions in this life and will punish us for bad actions, there will be some kind of a consequence, some connection between how we live our life today and how we do things today and what we are going to live, what we are going to interconnecting link. You call law of karma or theory of reincarnation, anything you may call. This is what actually regulates human context. You can find this in all religious traditions, in all ancient tribal customs you find. Some sort of a belief other than what is visible right in front of us. So Nachiketa comes to this stage. So he asks the second boon. The second boon is, of course in Sanskrit is called Sattum Agnim Sorgim Addeshu Mrityu Prabruhitam Sadadanaya Mahyam Sorgaloka Amrutum Bhajante Edat Trayanam Ditiyam Varamprane. The second boon is this. He says, please teach me that Vedic ritual, some sort of a, let us say, spiritual practice, which will guarantee that I will go to heaven and have all the wonderful things in heaven. Because I want to enjoy, not only in this world, I want to enjoy heaven also. In fact, even that idea comes to a very noble person. A person who can think of some sort of existence beyond this empirical, earthly, physical, bodily existence. It requires some degree of evolution. In fact, that makes you more compassionate, more humane, and more understanding of life as a whole. So, it is related to some kind of universal ethical principle. So, Nachiketa asks, please teach me a Vedic ritual, some ceremony or spiritual practice that will guarantee that I will have the same peaceful, happy life in heaven, not only in this world. Yama did not hesitate for a second. Straight away he granted that. It's very important to remember Yama's response to the request for the first and second boons and his his response to the third request for the third boon. There is a great contrast. Now Nachiketa enters the third stage, which means the third stage of human spiritual aspirations. You can find this more or less among all the 8 billion population inhabiting this earth throughout history. These 3 levels of human aspirations. Now, technically speaking, once we understand the dynamics of these 3 stages of human spiritual aspirations, it will help us to live a happy life in this world. We will have problems, but we will be able to look at these problems from a higher. We will run away from the problem, but even while facing the problem or trying to solve the problem, we won't be devastated. We won't consider the problem as something totally devastating. It won't be a disaster. Take in our stride. So that is the practical benefit of understanding these 3 boons. The next boon that little boy asked for is something very important. That's the essence of these Upanishads. That's the essence of all Vedantic scriptures, and that's the essence of all the teachings of all the great sages. With Shankaracharya, Buddha, Vivekananda, Sri Ramakrishna, all of them taught the essence. That's the third boon. The third boon is very interesting. He says, Yayam preti vichikitsa manushi asti tyege nayam asti dichaige edad vidya manusishta stoyaham varana mesha varastritiyaha. That this is the third boon I am asking. What's that? Some people say that when people die, that's the end of the journey. This is one view. You find even ancient times, there were charvakas, there were materialists, and even today also irrationalists, accidentalists. Many of them, of course, believe, or called evolutionists, of course, believe that the physical life is only life and death is the end of the journey. So, Ayam Prede Vijikitsa Manushi. It's a big discussion going on among scholars, philosophers, saints. One view is this. When people die, that's the end of everything. Another view is, even when the physical body is no more there, something continues to exist. Something which cannot die. And now what is the real truth behind this controversy, these conflicting views? You are the fittest person to teach me. This is the third boon. This knowledge, the knowledge of the mystery of death, is the knowledge of mystery of life. But literally speaking, if you interpret the Yayam Prete Vijikitsa Manushi Asti Tyege Nayam Asti Dijaige, when this body has has died, then the question arises, something asti, something continues to exist, nothing continues to exist. These are 2 views. When the body comes to an end, something is left out, which is immortal, which is our ultimate destination, which is deathless. The other view is, no, nothing remains. That's the end of it. Edad vidya manushisya stoyaham varana mesha varastritiyaha. This is the third boon I am asking. Please teach. We are the best teacher for this. Now here, this is a very interesting turn, the Upanishads. Yama is not too pleased when the little boy asks for the third boon. The reason is, Yama is not convinced that he is fit for the highest knowledge. And that is a very interesting aspect of Vedanta. You may ask the question, why should the teacher be so stingy, so miserly, so hesitant? The teacher knows that if he teaches a person who is not ready for it, it won't have any effect, and it could have even the opposite effect. So, Shankaracharya's Bhashyas, commentaries have got one interesting discussion. An atheist is coming and asking the question. If Brahman is everywhere, Atman is everywhere, God is everywhere, then why should we worry about God? Oh, he is everywhere, okay, then fine, let us have the best of life. We didn't worry about him. We are also, God is present in me also. So okay, then I am God, fine. So there's no problem. Then why should he have all these Vedanta scriptures, theology, philosophy, meditation, prayer, all these absolutely temples, churches? Because God is everywhere and God is present in me. So why bother about all these big problems? So this is a controversy, this is a wrong objection raised by a materialist philosopher in ancient times, in the Bhamadi, in the find it. It's a technical work. Now, the question is, if God is everywhere, then why can't we experience it? When we reach a higher level of spiritual sensitivity through prayer, meditation, and earnest practices, self-restraint, morality, prayer, and good yamas, niyamas, mean ethical principles, then our mind will be ready to recognize spiritual values in their real meaning, with the real meaning and importance, relevance. Otherwise, even spiritual values we may interpret through the prism of materialistic, rational things. We can look at the world from God's eyes. You can look at God from world's eyes. So if you look at God through the world, we wear a spectacle, worldly glasses made of worldliness, so to speak, and look at God, you will see only very worldly minded person. If you look at the world from God's eyes, then you see divinity everywhere. The two perspectives in a call. So, Nachiketa was not really ready, or perhaps he was ready. We do not know. That was the problem before the teacher. The teacher wanted to test whether the little boy was ready or not. So, he gives some other options before he actually begins his exposition of the highest spiritual truth. So, he tries to tempt and test the little boy. Look here, it's a big problem, a big philosophical, spiritual problem, which is discussed by great philosophers and gods and goddesses, and you are too young, and why should you worry about these big philosophical questions? I shall make you a king of the world. I shall give you all money and wealth. I shall give you everything that you will enjoy. Please don't ask for this boon. So, the little boy was being put to a test. Now remember, unless in material life, in spiritual instruction, we won't have any real benefit or lasting benefit, so to speak, till we are actually ready. It's just like the gold or iron should be hot enough. Then only it will have an impact. It will have an impact when you hit it with a sledgehammer. Otherwise, it won't have any effect. That's why every day we hear great things. We listen to great things. We read wonderful books. We take a decision, tomorrow I shall pray, I shall meditate, I shall change my... But then when the time comes, mind doesn't permit you to do that. Mind does not always permit you to do what your intellect asks you to do. Your intellect, trained by philosophical training, maybe listening to lectures, once you listen to a wonderful idea, read a great book, and you suddenly it has an impact, great effect on the mental system. Well, I will do things in a different way from tomorrow onwards. When the tomorrow moment comes, some invisible objection arises, obstacle arises. Mind doesn't cooperate with intellect. It's a conflict between intellect and mind. Emotions, attitudes on the one hand, and strong will and desire on the other. That's because the mind is not ready for what the intellect is ready. So unless the mind is ready, we won't be able to do anything, though we may have the best of intentions. There are many criminals who rather lead normal life. but their accumulated ideas, emotions, impressions, and attitudes related to mental system won't permit them frequently, won't permit them to do good things. That's why meditation through prayer, through various practices, the mind is being slowly purified, made ready to do what actually benefits them. So that's why Yama, the teacher, tests the student to make sure that he is ready for it. His mind is ready, what his intellect is actually aspiring for. So, now here, okay, we'll continue. Okay. Okay. It's okay now? You can hear now? Oh, thank you. So, the teacher presents before the student many other options, almost like the way Satan tested Jesus, something along those lines you find. I shall make you the emperor of the world. I shall give you plenty of wealth and happiness. Don't ask for this higher boon. But Nachiketa persisted, and finally Yama agreed. This is how the Upanishad comes to the central message of the spiritual philosophy. And then Yama tells him, what you are looking for in this world is okay. That is only one aspect of life. That is physical prosperity, wealth, status. It's called Abhyudaya. Abhyudaya means whatever you acquire for enjoying without deviating from the path of dharma or morality. That is fine. That will take you, that may help you to attain success, to have all the good things of this world. But that will not satisfy the deeper aspirations of the mind. As I mentioned earlier, the wealthiest man may be most miserable in his mind, and also at the psychological level, he may not be able to enjoy whatever wealth he has acquired. So, physical health doesn't guarantee mental health. Vedanta teaches that the problems of the mind do not have permanent solutions at the mental level. Psychological problems cannot have permanent, lasting solutions at the psychological level. Psychological problems will have permanent effect only at the spiritual level. When you have to go beyond mind and should be able to link our mind to something that never falls sick, that is Atma. Then what happens? Mind also becomes healthy. Such a spiritually enlightened person will be able to look upon success and failure, good and bad, pain and pleasure, with a perfect equanimity of mind. So for that, we should elevate ourselves. We should go beyond body, beyond intellect, and beyond mind. We should be able to transcend mind and link ourselves to a higher spiritual principle to be able to confront psychological problems. That means there is no permanent solutions for psychological problems at psychological level. Permanent solutions for psychological problems are beyond psyche, beyond mind. It is a spiritual level. That is the central principle. How do we realize this? Yama gives a number of instructions. One well-known verse is this: Anoraniyan makoto makhiyan atmasi jentoho nihidam gukhayam tamakradu pasyati vidashokakha dhadu prasadat mahimanam atmana. Yama, the teacher, tells the boy, there is one deathless, immortal reality, immortal principle that is immanent, present in all of us. It is present in the minutest of the minute, within an atom, within an amoeba. It is also present in the grandest, largest of the large, as the immanent principle. It is present in everything. One may ask the question, if Atman is present in us, and this Atman is the reality, the absolute reality, that's our true nature, and if Atman is immortal and deathless, and realizing this Atman, we'll be able to look upon pain and pleasure, life and death, good and bad, with the same equanimity of mind, then why don't we experience this? So the teacher tells him, okay, you can experience this. How? Just as you work hard in the field to grow crops, or you work hard in a laboratory to do experiments, so also you should work hard at another level. Prayer, meditation, contemplation, following principles of self-restraint, self-control, control of the senses, yama, niyamas, and then the principles and disciplines of renunciation of material pleasures, or restraint on enjoying them. Through these disciplines, through these eternal principles, and also by developing a strong desire to transcend and to reach our immortal dimension, to realize our spiritual dimension of a personality. You should have a strong desire for it. Through these disciplines, you can realize this. Every good action slowly removes one dark corner from our mind. Prayer, meditation, good actions, service for others without any selfish motive. All these can enrich our mental system by developing good vasanas, good vrittis, good samskaras. Bring more and more light into the dark corners of the mind, so that the mind will be ready for it. When we get ready for it, we realize that this is our true nature. When we reach our goal, immortality, we are not going from one place to another place. We are actually rediscovering our true identity. We are already staying in our homes, but we thought we are moving far away. Suddenly we bring light and we are sitting here. We are rediscovering, not inventing, not producing. We are actually realizing our true nature. That's why this realization has got 4 important qualities, important principles to remember, and that is very crucial in understanding this. When we talk about spiritual growth, spiritual enlightenment, we frequently try to analyze this from rational philosophical perspectives. You are getting a new knowledge, or you are producing a new concept, or maybe from one stage you are traveling to another stage. Now Shankaracharya, the great commentator, says this spiritual enlightenment or moksha or liberation is not something that you produce like a pot maker produces a pot, or a goldsmith produces a golden ring. It's not something that you produce. It is not like going from one village to another village. It is not something that you produce, that you make from something else. like yogurt you prepare from milk. Milk becomes yogurt. So it's not apya, it is not samskarya, not upadhya, like that. They are not vikarya. So I'm not going to those technical things. One of the central principles of this Vedantic realization is it is not something new. We are not getting a new knowledge. We are not going from one place to another place. Rather, we are discovering our true nature. Before that, we thought we are somewhere else. Now we are coming back to where we actually belong. So that is the uniqueness, because if it is something new, then it cannot be immortal. It is something which is already there. We forgot it. Now suddenly we wake up. So in the one of the Upanishad says, Anadi Maya Supto Yatha Jiva Prabudhite Ajamanidram Aswapnam Advaita Buddhite Tada. In the Mandukya Karika, this statement is a very famous statement. We are in a spiritual sleep, spiritual slumber. And we thought we are going to New York or somewhere. When we wake up, we don't return from New York. So going to New York, being in New York, was actually a wrong notion. When we wake up, we discover where we actually are. So when we practice these disciplines, suddenly this self-discovery takes place within our system. And then what happens? What's the practical benefit? Not that we will be able to solve all material problems. We will be able to look upon these problems from a different perspective. There is a reprioritization process going on, so that these problems will not be problems at all. Not that we become indifferent, we become negligent, we become complacent, not at all. The point is, if you have cancer, there will be cancer. Vedantic realization doesn't cure cancer. For that you have to go to a doctor. Vedanta has got much bigger diseases to cure actually. The point is, Vedanta will help us to look upon this problem from a higher perspective, so that we won't be devastated. It won't have a devastating, destructive impact on our system. We won't be anxious, too anxious. Anxiety neurosis won't be there. We will be anxious, but we won't have anxiety neurosis actually. So this is the practical benefit of understanding Vedanta. It helps us to look upon the whole dynamics of life from a higher perspective, so that what we normally consider problems will cease to be problems. There will be problems, we will solve them, but they won't have a devastating effect on the mental system. That's the idea. So now we will have interaction for half an hour. So we can, those of you who want to ask questions are most welcome. That will give me a chance to explain many things that I may have perhaps omitted due to want of time.
Swamiji, namaste. My question is, can you restate the third boon and the essence of what Nachiketa was asking?
Asking. What Nachiketa was asking was this. What is the essence of human existence? Human life. What's our true nature? What's our true nature? Are we the body? If we are the body, then death is the end of everything, physical death. Or is there something that continues to live, that continues to exist, even after physical death? Now, indirectly, of course, we will continue the discussion. There's a main topic in this retreat. Indirectly he was asking, through this narrative, through this third boon, the Upanishad sages are introducing the central theme of the Upanishads, the nature of Atman, the nature of Brahman. So that's how a normal human being starts thinking. You heard of Ramana Maharshi, his father died and he went upstairs and thought his father was there till a few days, same day, now where is he? That made him think and he became Ramana Maharshi. So Nachiketa was asking, what is the absolute reality? What's the nature of absolute reality? And what is our true nature? Is this body, is the mind, is the intellect, or something else? So, in answer to this, Yama begins a long discussion. First, of course, he tests Nachiketa. Then he discusses two important paths in normal human life. One, Abhyudaya, what is called Preya. The other is Nisreyasa, it is called Sreya. I shall explain this. One, normal human beings, they work hard to make wealth and try to become prosperous, and they want to enjoy. They, of course, will follow the guidelines of Dharma. And that's their concept of life as a whole. Such people normally don't worry about what happens after death. Have a wonderful life in this world. Beyond that, there is nothing. Then there are spiritually more evolved people who think, well, is there something to me other than this body, mind and intellect? Body changes, mind also wavers, intellect also is not always steady. So change or impermanence are integral aspects of body, mind, intellect, everything. If we are nothing other than this body, mind or intellect, then there is nothing very great about us. So Yama the Upanishad sage slowly takes up the topic of the immortal nature of man, human beings. There is something in us which is immortal, which is called Atman as the immanence reality, Brahman as the transcendental, omnipresent reality. So that's our true nature. How do we realize this? We have to meditate, we have to pray. Before that, we have to follow certain disciplines, ethical, moral disciplines. Once we do this, slowly we will begin to change. Now the question arises, this is not a concept, it is a matter of experience. That's one important point to remember. Now, very often, this is a major problem in modern times. We look upon Vedanta as a concept, as an idea, which is wrong. Vedanta is essentially a matter of inner experience. Now, if it is a concept, then we can have a GPS system. We can make we can prepare a route, a path, like a flight path. We can program it. After this, finally Brahman realization. It doesn't follow, it doesn't happen that way. Because our mind, we do not know how our mind is going to behave next day, next moment. At a physical level, you can have a GPS system. It is predictable. So predictability is okay at the physical level, but not even at the mental or intellectual level. Mind is not within our control. Mind will be within our control when it is linked to Atman. That's what Vedanta tells you. Mind will remain steady, unchanging, unwavering when it is linked to Atman. How? We have to think, we have to contemplate again and again. Well, behind my mind, behind my intellect, there is an unchanging reality. This contemplation will link the mind to this unchanging, permanent reality. Something which is shaking, you tie to a stone or a pillar, it may shake, but it won't break off. That's what happens. So again remember, it is not a matter of concept. It is not a concept or an idea. It's a matter of experience. And remember, spiritual life, we do not know how we will be looking at life next day. Even if you read a book, a good book right now, you go to a library, read a very wonderful book, and if you're highly impressed, next moment you'll be thinking differently. You cannot visualize how you will be thinking after reading the book. But physically we can predict more or less in which direction you will drive, left or right. The mind defies our skills to predict. So this is a matter of experience. So we have to begin with fundamental disciplines and listening to these ideas, trying to think and ponder over these ideas. That's how these ideas go deeper into our system. Clear? Okay, thank you. Yeah.
What is the Vedantic attitude towards Maya?
Maya, yeah. Yeah, Maya is more or less, it can be, its best translation in English would be relativity, impermanence. It is not illusion or delusion, it is impermanence. Maya is something, it is not totally unreal, but not totally real. If it were totally unreal, we will not be talking about it. Even as a concept, even as an idea, we can't even think of it if it were totally unreal. If it were totally real, then also we will not be thinking about it. It becomes so obvious. So, this world is supposed to be Maya. You heard this. Now, let us look at this world. This world, as we find today, it could exist for some billions of years, let us say. But before Big Bang, or before billions of years, it was in a different shape. And after the big crunch, if it going to happen, it will be different after several billions of years still further. So something that is subject to change is Maya. So Maya is not total or absolute non-existence. It is not absolute existence either. To be called as absolute existence, it should be beyond changes. Sadvikarati, that is called beyond 6 changes, Jayade, Asti, Vardhade, Vivarinamade, Abhakshiyade, Vinasi. There are different things. It should be beyond time, beyond causation, beyond space. So, when the absolute reality, when perceived through the prism of time, space and causation or relativity, is Maya. When you look at this world of Maya, after removing this prism, this glass of relativity, then you will see only Brahman. That is Maya. Maya is, that's why the word itself, it implies negation. Along with one of the lakaras, Maya means it is ma agachadu, don't come here. It negation. Ya is a pronoun. So you don't use a pronoun with regard to something which you cannot even think of. And you don't use the word negation, you don't negate something which is always there. So it is something that is not always there, but it is something that we experience at the relative, dualistic level. That is Maya. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So there is this concept that somehow the second level is not permanent, right? So from leap from the second to the third, how did that evolution happen?
Yeah. That's a very important question. When you see, the second boon corresponds to what in modern times, let us say, efficiency, success, wealth, prosperity, happiness, at the material level, of course. Material happiness. And in its peak can be called, it can be related to the second boon. Now, there are people who at one level start thinking of the impermanence of this happiness, efficiency, success, and so on. That they are called spiritual philosophers. The moment you start thinking of the impermanence of this impermanent world, you are actually traveling from the second to third boon. So, when you have all the best things in the world and no problem, still you feel a kind of inner discontent, dissatisfaction. You have a higher aspiration for something more everlasting. Because you are not happy with, you are not fully satisfied with all these things which normally will satisfy the majority of human population. Rather, they remind you of their limitations. There are people, Buddha for example, was living in a palace, he was 28 years old, he was a prince, and he saw a dead body, dead body being taken to cremation ground, and he found a sick man, an old man. So old age, sickness, death. They suddenly reminded him of some problems, some limitation of the happy, luxurious life he was living in his own palace. So he left his palace that night. So the transition from the second to third boon happens for yogis. So Vyasa's commentary says, it is, one should be a highly evolved person to feel dissatisfaction. Even when there is no material problem going on, still you feel a need to go for something higher. That's the journey from second to third boon.
Swamiji, my question is a related one to the discussion that's happening. I understand what you're saying about how you feel discontented with the impermanence nature of things. A lot of the foundational things when we talk about Brahman and Atman, the foundational element is that is unchanging, right? So even when Shankaracharya talks about why you are not the body or not the mind, right? He says, hey, that's a changing entity, so how can that be Brahman, right? But the assumption is Brahman is unchanging. Where does Vedanta establish that requirement that, hey, that has to be an unchanging entity? That part is not fully clear to me. Is it not? What if it was changing a little bit, right? That part is a little unclear to me.
But
right?
it's wrong if it's
what if it's changing a little bit?
Yeah. Okay. What is wrong if the permanent changes? It ceases to be permanent, that's true. That's true. Well, okay, now I shall try to explain this, because it deals with the basic metaphysical principles of Vedanta. So in Vedantic tradition, there are 4 approaches to reality in Vedantic metaphysics. 4 approaches to reality. At the highest level, this concept of Atman or Brahman, which is unchanging, permanent, absolute. It's the same. Those who reach that level of spiritual realization, they not that they always live at that level, but still they are able to look upon this impermanent world from a different perspective, different from how we normally see this world. Okay, so at the highest peak there is the absolute reality, unchanging reality. At the lowest level, there is absolute unreality. So absolute reality is called Sat, absolute unreality is called Asat. What is absolute unreality? Even when you think of it, you know it is obviously impossible, it is unreal. So sometimes called, the examples you find in Vedanta scriptures, the son of a barren woman, or the hairs of a horn, Vandhya Putra Sasavishana. If an animal has got horns, it cannot be hair, it could be some other animal. So, if it like Gandharva Nagara, children may look at the sky in the evening when there is sunlight, there is a big city above the clouds. So these are impossible even as a concept. Even when you coin an expression to call them, that word itself contains its negation. So it is self-contradictory. It contradicts itself on the face of it. These things are called absolutely unreal. Even as a concept, as an idea, it cannot exist. Between these, there are two levels of relative realities. One is the empirical, this world. See this paper, this book, this watch, all this. They are not totally unreal because we are making use of this. But they are not totally real because this watch was not there maybe 10 years back. This paper was not there, it was in some other form, maybe it can be a plant, a pulp or whatever, maybe. This podium was part of a tree, maybe 15 years back. So it has changed. But it has not come from non-existence. From one level of from one form, it has taken another form. Let us say gold has taken the form of a ring, earth has taken the form of a pot, like that. Or the tree has taken the form of this podium. They are not totally unreal, but they are not totally real because if they are totally real, they will be the same. This won't be the same after 1,000 years. It was not so before 100 years. It was a tree, a plant. So below that there is another reality, it's called Pradibhasika. The Pradibhasika reality is, see, when you bring, let us say, you bring a red flower close to a crystal, the crystal appears to assume redness, which is really very, very, it is not totally unreal because you can see red color there, but it is not as real as the empirical things. So there are Paramarthika, Vyavaharika, Pradibhasika and Asat. So 4 levels of approach, 4 levels of reality. The one is totally unreal, but it is also considered to be one approach. In Vedantic epistemology, abhava or negation itself is also one of the epistemological tools. It has something to do with theory of knowledge. Abhava means if there is no elephant there, that is also knowledge of the absence of the elephant. So they see that is something to do with Vedantic epistemology, theory of knowledge, which we won't discuss. Okay, thank you.
Swamiji,
Yeah.
The divine needs an audience for this wonderful creation.
Divine?
The divine requires an audience to appreciate this creation. But what about divine discontent?
What about?
Divine discontent.
Oh, yeah. Divine discontentment is the same which I mentioned earlier, the transition from the second boon to third boon. So, it comes only as a result of strong spiritual aspiration. There are people who feel an inherent natural aspiration for something higher, transcendental, spiritual, even when everything is fine for them here. So that's that kind of aspiration for the higher. So it is kind of divine dissatisfaction. It's called divine because it's rooted in an aspiration for the divine, in that sense. Yeah. The dissatisfaction itself is not divine, but is rooted on the aspiration for something divine, something transcendental. The transcendental discontentment, dissatisfaction. Without that, I tell you, if you don't mind, you won't be able to sit there and listen to this talk, because there is no entertainment, there is nothing very pleasant about it. There is nothing that plays with, that's very that satisfies the senses actually. Talking about some higher transcendental ideas which apparently do not make sense in the empirical world of our in which we are living, even to intellectually withstand the onslaught of Vedanta, one needs to have some higher aspiration. Because we can, if you feel at home with an idea, it means you are ready for it. That's what it is. So I've seen this among many people. So when we evolve to a higher level, we feel at home with certain ideas, because there is a connection, there is a link, the same frequency, same vibration. Yeah.
Then this would indicate that each one of us have a dharma, a prescription by the divine to find the divine. So there's an awakening period here.
Yeah. We cannot say prescription, because it is not predestination or anything. Our mental system has inherited from previous life and acquired lot of impressions, ideas, samskaras, vasanas, with which we live in this world. And there are many impressions, many samskaras which are good, and many which may not be good. That's one of the reasons why in the same family you find 5 children going to same school, identical family, identical environment, identical school, having 5 different characteristics. How do you explain that? Each is a separate jiva on a journey to immortality. Some of them have traveled a long distance, some of them have traveled a short distance. So some of them travel still a long road before them. So that's all. Depending upon this, we are able to connect with this, with our idea.
Swamiji, thank you. Swamiji, one thing about Nachiketa is that in the initial stage, he is very truthful with his father. When he's giving away the cows, he calls him out saying that like you're giving away all these old and decrepit cows, this is not really dana. And I think in previous retreats you're told that actually is a very fundamental thing which a spiritual aspirant needs to have. So my question is, spiritual life is a long life. What are the essential qualities? Because Nachiketa is able to forge ahead and successfully be very, reach the goal, if I might say. But there are a lot of obstacles on the path. So what are the essential qualities a spiritual aspirant needs to exhibit, not just at the beginning, but through his life, which will eventually make him successful, as in case of Nachiketa?
These are 4 disciplines called sadhana chatuštaka, means 4 important disciplines. The first one is, we should have a clear understanding of what is the really worthy values, ideas that we need to cultivate. And once we understand that, then we will have a natural tendency to avoid the unreal, the negative things. Nitya anitya vastu viveka. It's a kind of wisdom that comes as a result of being able to discern what is the really worthy values, ideas. And once you realize this, you will have the tendency to avoid the unworthy, the unreal things. In fact, in our life, we have this, even at the grossest material life. See, children fight for chocolates or toys. When they grow up, they fight for many other things. When they become business people, they for something else. The fight continues, but even at the level of ordinary human aspirations, there is a gradation. the ideal, the discerning between real and unreal. Okay, at the spiritual level, the real unreal equation is this. You will have a new system of prioritization, a new concept of priority. What is actually the real thing that I should care for, and what I can disregard as being relatively unreal. In fact, one advantage of developing this quality is that you will be able to disregard the unreal, the worthless things without much pain. Just as grown-up youngsters are able to discard their taste for chocolates when they grow old. At the physical level it happens. The spiritual level, when we reprioritize a new sense of order of priority, then we will be able to care more for the higher spiritual values and proportionately less for other things. So that's a great help actually. In fact, if there are people who would say, oh, it's difficult to take the long journey for the retreat and there are many other things to do. In fact, to some extent it may be true, but let's say 50% could be that there is an option even to accommodate retreat within the system. But their concept of prioritization has not reached that level. So it always a matter of, I know people who are very sick who have come here. And I know people who are very healthy who, well, this is something we can do later, No, it is not wrong, and there is nothing wrong in it. It is only different levels of evolution, different levels of this reprioritization. So when we begin our spiritual life, we concept a whole new sense of priority. That's what happens. The second one is, as a result of this, we will have a sense of renunciation for the so-called unreal, so-called worthless things. That is called ihamutra phalabhoga viraga. The third one is, as a result of this, you will have a inner self-control, self-restraint, technically called, samadhi sarka sampatti. Third. I'm explaining mostly in English, but the Sanskrit origin I'm giving that. So, fourth one is a strong desire for higher values, that is liberation or whatever it is. It is again rooted on reprioritization. So one fundamental change that happens even when you read a great book with great earnestness, at least for the time being, is that we will start setting a new order of priority. 24 hours, common for everyone. Energy, all these are common. So we live our life according to the order of priority that we set before us. That's what happens. Once we can change it, then it will be wonderful. Okay, thank you. So we will continue the discussion day afternoon. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Order of India.